You don't want to buy into a franchise system where they're selling a franchise to everyone with a pulse and a checkbook. The red flag prospects would be someone who says, I'm a serial entrepreneur. That's not someone who's going to follow your franchise system.
It's so relationshipy. Like it's 10 years. It's like a marriage. There's red flags and green flags. It's like
a relationship.
It's like they're dating. We get a lot of brokers that work with us and refer us clients that are going to possibly buy, prospects that are going to buy. And between that and some of the franchisors that we've worked with, they talk about like, what do they need to know in terms of selling franchises? And my honest answer from my perspective is, I don't know, but Caroline does. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Like, have you done regulatory trainings for franchise systems?
Absolutely. I do. Regulatory trainings is included in our flat fee for franchise development. And
I did not know that. Okay, great.
Key detail. And one of the great things that we bring to the table with that is when I'm not helping franchises get set up, I actually represent franchisees in litigation. So when I say, don't do this or you will get sued, I understand how that happens.
The other side of the playbook.
The other side of the playbook. And I think one of the things that franchisors do not understand is how wildly optimistic and unsophisticated franchisees are.
Can be.
Those are the ones you need to worry about because they are looking at this franchise system with hopes and dreams in their heart. And what that means is even if we've developed an FDD that lays everything out very clearly, they are paying a lot more attention to what the sales guy told them, what the broker told them, what the best case scenario is. And it's really important that a franchisor develop a sales process that sets expectations clearly and prevents these starry-eyed franchisees from purchasing a franchise without really knowing what they're getting into.
All right. But they can't turn themselves into lawyers and expect to sell. Like they're just all dismal and like, by the way, dampen your dreams and don't get too excited and still give us your life savings and commit your time to this. Like, so you're the lawyer, you're trying to explain to a bunch of salespeople how to do this, towing this line between selling, but also not, I guess I'd say overselling.
Overselling is the key. That's what we want to avoid. You've built a great franchise system, and that FDD should be your sales document. You should talk about, what services you provide, how your royalties are slightly lower for different things perhaps than other franchise systems. That's a great way to sell the document. But you also want to have a franchisee who's going to be a long-term successful partner. And I say it's equal expectations. Your franchise agreement, it is 10 years. Most people, that is as long as a lot of first marriages. So it's important that you go into this with equal expectations about what that relationship is. Because the last thing you want as a franchisor is to sell a franchise, have the franchisee in the system, and realize that that franchisee didn't know that they needed to devote their full-time best efforts to being in that store.
All right. It strikes me that there's actually some benefit from looking at this from both perspectives. As a franchisee, what to expect in the sales process, and as a franchisor, what to do in the sales process. So why don't we go through it? Like you get a call or you get an email, you get an inquiry, and you're on the franchisor side. What's the process look like from your perspective?
From my perspective, the first thing that we need to figure out is whether or not this is actually a franchise. Now, 90% of the time, it's going to be a franchise. But
what we're selling
is a franchise.
Let's assume that it is. We're registered. We've had those conversations. We know it's a franchise. And now we've got a live one on. And the salesperson is trying to sell and get a commission. And there's some things they can or can't do. And there's some processes, some procedures they got to follow. Like they've got to give them the FTD. And that's FDD. There's a 14-day rule.
It's actually a 16-day rule.
What the hell is all that?
Because naturally, franchise regulations were written by lawyers, and lawyers can do many things well. I'm convinced they can't count because that 14-day waiting period is actually a 16-day waiting period because you give a prospective franchisee the FDD. They have 14 days until they can sign, but you actually don't count the day you gave them and you don't count the day they sign. So it's even a 16-day waiting period.
All right. So I get the inquiry and I'm like, stop. We can't even talk here. I'm giving you the FDD. Is that what
They're
how it goes?
The FDD isn't candy. You should give it out only when you've decided that this is someone you would be comfortable awarding a franchise to.
It's okay to vet and you should vet. And as a franchisee,
Absolutely
you
vet.
should expect to be vetted.
Yes. You don't want to buy into a franchise system where they're selling a franchise to everyone with a pulse and a checkbook.
Okay.
And as a franchisor, you don't want to find yourself in a 10-year relationship with franchisees who bought in just because they had a checkbook to do it. You really want to be vetting on both sides of the equation.
All right. So what kinds of questions? What do you expect to be? What can you ask a franchisee, a prospect, and what as a franchisee can you expect to have to answer?
You can ask a prospect to run a credit report, to get a background check, to get their resume, to spend some time figuring out what this prospective franchisee is looking for in the system. One of the things I work with my clients when we do franchise development is we talk about green flags and red flags. Green flag in terms of a prospective franchisee, veterans. Veterans are fabulous franchisees because they are very good at executing on a plan. A lot of recent immigrants can be fantastic franchisees because they are really committed to working and building their dream through this franchise model. The red flag prospects would be someone who says, I'm a serial entrepreneur. That's someone who likes to do things their own way, reinvent the wheel. That's not someone who's going to follow your franchise system.
It's so relationshipy. Like it's 10 years. It's like a marriage. There's red flags and green flags.
It is a relationship.
It's like they're dating.
It is. It's a dating process. And people wouldn't go through a dating process saying, I'm just going to, marry the first person who will take me.
Wouldn't they? Aren't there some there's some that'll sign up a franchisee and there's some that'll just.
That is why I have a thriving litigation practice. But
Okay.
my goal for my franchisor clients is to never have to use my litigation skills because we're going to build a system that is so fantastic that they don't have to worry about lawsuits from franchisees.
How long does that vetting process take? How long, but if I'm, okay, I'll give you the stuff. I'll tell you what you need to know. How long before I get the FDD and then I can start what? When as a franchisee prospect can I start asking questions of other franchisees? And when, as a franchisor doing this, should I tell them that you can go do some due diligence on the franchise system?
When you give them the FDD, I joke that there are the 3 Ds of selling a franchise: disclose, disclaim, and due diligence. So disclose.
That's 4 Ds, by the way. Okay, just.
Thanks. Lawyers and accountants, like I said. The first one is disclose. That's your FDD. That is what is going to tell them the nuts and bolts of what does this franchise system look like and what are they buying into in terms of franchisor support, number of units, item 19, which would be sales information if they're choosing to share that. Disclaim, always focus on if you don't have an item 19 or if there is information that is beyond item 19, make it really clear that you can give this information, you cannot give that other information. And then that's where the due diligence comes in. Every franchisor should say, we list every franchisee in our system in the FDD. We list the franchisees who've left the system in the last year. You should talk to as many of those people as possible, and you should ask really hard questions.
Do you think as a franchisor or salesperson, you should tell the franchisee that they should get a lawyer?
I always think that you should have a prospective franchisee talk to a lawyer. First of all, my clients have a great sales process.
If I'm selling, why would I do that? Nothing is worse for a deal than a lawyer. Like seriously, that just ruins all deals. Like, let's get a lawyer.
Because you're protecting both of you with the lawyer. A lawyer is going to have a real nuts and bolts conversation with the franchisee. and make sure that they actually do know what they are getting into in ways that you as a salesperson, it's hard to share that information, and it's hard to do that without discouraging it. A lawyer is going to make sure that everyone's getting into this agreement with equal expectations, and that sets you up for a strong partnership.
The thing that a lot of the brokers that I've worked with who've been doing this a longer time realize, I would add, is that you're better off steering the conversation in terms of lawyer selection to someone who knows franchising, because if you don't do that, you run the risk of Uncle Bob, who does estates and trusts, looking at that franchise agreement and just losing his mind and just blowing up your deal because he just can't handle the way the contract reads, and which was not, that's that for a different day, but getting someone who's kind of in the industry and knows kind of what's normal is better. That is a less of a risk than just letting them go find somebody else.
Uncle Bob is going to rewrite the franchise agreement in a way that no franchisor could ever operate a franchise with. But having an experienced franchise attorney and having the sales guy say, hey, give so-and-so a call, they know their stuff. Sure, maybe there's going to be some negotiations, but they're going to be negotiations on things that a franchisor can actually negotiate on. It really can help you clarify, these are the things we can work with, these are the things we can do business with. That's why a broker should encourage them not just to hire an attorney, but say, hire a franchise attorney. By the way, here are 2 or 3 franchise attorneys who know their stuff and will be helpful. One of the great things that a franchise attorney can do that actually benefits the franchisor is they can say to a prospective franchisee who's looking for mailbox money, who thinks that they can sign a franchise agreement, put a manager in the store, and just wait for that money to roll in. A good franchise attorney is going to check that expectation, because I hate to tell you this, Nate, there is no such thing as mailbox money. And as a franchisor, you sure as heck don't want a franchisee in your system who's expecting it.
I want the mailbox money. We all want the mailbox money.
If we could find the mailbox money, we would not be running a law firm.
I don't know. I might do it anyway.
I'd be on a yacht. But
so I want to back you up, though, because one of the things that just gets a lot of attention, both in the legal world, in where we live, but also in the broker and franchise world, is the item 19. And as we went past that, I think the word you used was sales information. And I kind of want to, when I'm talking to a franchisee prospect, the information is presented in item 19 of the franchise disclosure document, which a franchisor can either opt to make or not make. And it used to be that franchisors would never do this. And over time, they realized, actually, it's a little bit, it's sort of insulating us if we put this in here. Like, we're better off if we control the message and put in the data. But they parse it out in weird ways. They'll do like, it's thirds, and then it's the top third. And then you got to be looking at like who's in the data set, how long does the store need to be open? And how are you, when you're doing your training and you talk to the salesperson about like, this is the thing that's going to get the focus. How much money, this much money, what's in here? How do you train salespeople around how to bring that into the conversation?
I have them use the FDD as their primary way to introduce things in the conversation. First of all, because if they have the document in front of them, they know that they're following the numbers that are in the FDD. And then I really focus with, is it in item 19? And if it is not in item 19, they cannot say it. And I'm really strict on that. And we role play. I'll pretend to be a prospective franchisee and try and get that information out of them. But I keep directing them to focus on those item 19 representations. And you know what? You can put a lot of information in item 19. And there are other places in the franchise agreement where you can get a lot of information. You can look at your item 7. It's really important that the franchise salesperson use that FDD. The franchise system has spent money developing it, and they should use it to sell the franchise.
So here's something I've always wondered about, because like I said, you do this and I don't. You go in, you do the training, everybody's like, they get it and they're doing it, and then time passes and new people are hired and things, perhaps quality control erodes. How, as a franchisor, do you keep an eye on observing that the training is, being followed and that best practices are being implemented and that there's quality there? Is there a role for you to play in follow-up, or do you have advice that you give them in terms of how are you monitoring this? Like, what's the best way in just from your perspective?
Yeah, there are two things we do. First of all, an FDD needs to be updated at least every year. So what that really means is I'm talking to my franchisor clients at least 4 times a year. And every time we talk, I say, hey, who's selling your franchises? Any new updates we need to talk about? And I make sure that they if we've got a new FDD included in that renewal flat fee is a brush up. Maybe it's we walk through the new sections of the FDD, but if they've got a new salesperson, it also gives us an opportunity to do that compliance training.
Okay.
The other thing I do is I am a huge believer in checklists. Surgeons use it, pilots use it, franchise systems should use it too. And what you do with that checklist is when you're selling that franchise, before the franchisor signs in the dotted line, I have the sales guy and then some other executive within the franchise system walk through and say, this is our prospect, Jane Doe. And this is why we think she would make a great franchisee. This is the date we gave her the FDD. She can sign now because it's been 16 days. And you walk through the sales process because using that checklist prevents there from being a lawsuit in the future.
It would seem like they could use that as a shield. Like, no, we did all the things. We wrote it all down. Here the process that she went through.
Absolutely, it's a shield. If they call me 5 years down the road because they have a problem, the first thing I'm going to want to see is that checklist, because that is going to be where the rubber hits the road, where we can say we've documented that we followed these procedures.
Bigger conversation for a different day, but would you say that having those checklists in the file enhances your value when you go to sell the franchise system?
Absolutely.
First thing, feel all warm and happy that, it's all been done. I'm not going to get sued.
Being able to say we've run a tight ship and you're not getting sued, you're not buying a Pandora's box of problems, is a huge advantage when you go to sell the system.
All right. Well, this is training that you do as part of the FDD development process. Is it also something that you're available to do just on its own?
Absolutely. I would be happy to do that. Sometimes I even do it on behalf of franchisors who've run sideways of state regulators.
Do you travel or online, or what do you prefer?
Whatever works best for the client. If it's a small group, we can do it online. If it's a larger group, I really do think the person-to-person connection is important, and I'm happy to hop up in a plane to talk regulations.
All right. Nerding out with the franchise attorney. Right on. It's everybody's favorite 2 days.
Regulations are awesome.
Yeah, they are.